This program is supported by Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant, kills 99.9% of disease-causing germs and works in 10 minutes.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. On tonight's headlines. Twin suicide bombs ripped through crowds outside Kabul Airport, killing at least 85 people, including 13 U.S. troops, and deepening panic in the final days of an already frenzied evacuation effort from Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, and President Biden vows revenge. The risk of rare blood clotting after receiving COVID-19 jabs is far lower than from the virus, according to a large-scale study by researchers from the University of Oxford found Friday. A new scientific study says heavy rainfall and catastrophic flooding events like those that hit Western Europe last month will now be more frequent and intense due to climate change. And space weather observers noted a massive solar tsunami across the sun caused by the eruption of a sunspot that happened on Thursday, August 26, according to a website monitoring the sun's activity. First, twin suicide bombs ripped through crowds outside Kabul Airport, killing at least 85 people, including 13 U.S. service troops, and deepening panic in the final days of an already frenzied evacuation effort from Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. President Joe Biden, under enormous pressure over his administration's handling of the Afghan crisis, said the airlift would not be derailed and vowed to punish those responsible. Take a look.
These ISIS terrorists will not win. We will rescue the Americans who are there. We will get our Afghan allies out, and our mission will go on. America will not be intimidated. To those who carried out this attack, as well as anyone who wishes America harm, know this: we will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay.
The 13 U.S. military troops killed in the bombing attack on Kabul Airport Thursday amounted to the worst single-day loss for the Pentagon in Afghanistan since 2011. The U.S. Defense Department said 13 were killed after two suicide bombers deployed by the Afghanistan branch of the Islamic State group detonated their bombs by a key gate into the airport and at a nearby hotel used for staging evacuees. The initial toll was 12, which increased when an additional service member died from the wounds. 10 of those killed and several wounded were U.S. Marines, Marine Corps spokesman Major Jim Stanger said in a statement. Meanwhile, President Biden also said he has seen no evidence that the Taliban colluded with ISIS militants in carrying out the deadly attacks in Kabul. Let's listen in.
There is no evidence thus far that I've been given as a consequence by any of our commanders in the field that there has been collusion between the Taliban and ISIS in carrying out what happened today, both in front of the hotel and what is expected to continue. The Taliban, they're not good guys, the Taliban. We're not suggesting that at all. But they have keen interest. As many of you have been reporting, they very much would like to figure out how to keep the airport open. They don't have the capacity to do it. That still presents the opportunity for the next several days between now and the 31st to be able to get them out. And our military, and I believe, to the extent that we can do that, knowing the threat, knowing that we may very well have another attack, the military has concluded that's what we should do. I think they're right.
Look, I'm not trying to sugarcoat what we think of the Taliban. The Taliban they're not a group we trust. They are not our friends. We have never said that. It is also the reality that the Taliban controls large swaths of Afghanistan. And to date, because of coordination with the Taliban, we've been able to evacuate more than 104,000 people, save 104,000 lives. And that coordination is necessary in order to continue our evacuation measure. We have an enormous amount of leverage, this is our view, over time. That includes economic leverage, that includes leverage that we will make clear to the Taliban as it relates to coordination to continue to get American citizens and our partners out. Go ahead.
The Islamic State group claimed responsibility for the deadly suicide attack at the airport in Kabul. The bomber was able today to penetrate all the security fortifications and get within 5 meters or 16 feet of U.S. forces before detonating his explosives belt, the jihadist group's propaganda arm, AMAC, said, according to a translation by the site. General Kenneth McKenzie, head of U.S. Central Command, told reporters before the claim of responsibility that once the United States confirmed who was behind the attack, he said, "We will go after them." He also said that the threat of more attacks, including a vehicle bomb, remained imminent and warned that the group would also like to attack one of the dozens of aircraft flying in and out of the airport as the evacuation continues. Meanwhile, the Department of Foreign Affairs, or the DFA, said no Filipino has been wounded or was wounded in this suicide bomb attack at Kabul Airport that killed dozens of civilians and 13 American troops. Preliminary information from Philippine Ambassador Daniel Espiritu, who is based in Islamabad, Pakistan, indicates that there were no Filipino casualties at the suicide bombings at Kabul Airport yesterday, according to Foreign Affairs Assistant Secretary Eduardo Meñas in a text message. The Islamic State Khorasan, or ISIS-K, claimed responsibility for the attack, which was carried out as the U.S. and Western nations are scrambling to ferry out its citizens and other nationals out of Kabul before the August 31st deadline set by the Taliban. Since the Taliban seized the capital, 185 Filipinos have been safely evacuated out of Afghanistan, while 24 are still in the country. Of this number, 16 are seeking repatriation, and the Philippine government has repeatedly vowed to work with foreign governments and international organizations to ensure their exit. And last-ditch evacuation flights took off from Kabul Airport today, a day after the twin suicide bombings on crowds trying to flee Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, killing at least 85 now, including 13 U.S. servicemen. And the attackers targeted people trying to reach access gates at the airport, creating scenes of terror and devastation. On Friday morning, some evacuation flights resumed, with queues of people seen lining up at the tarmac, but there were no more crowds near the sites of the blast, according to AFP reporters on the scene. Britain and Spain announced their evacuation operations would end today after Canada and Australia had already stopped their flights. More than 100,000 people have been flown out of the country since the Taliban swept into power on August 15. The Taliban have promised a softer brand of rule compared with their first stint in power, which ended in 2001 when the U.S. invaded because they gave sanctuary to al-Qaeda. But many Afghans fear a repeat of their brutal interpretation of Islamic law, as well as violent retribution for working with foreign militaries, Western missions, or the previous U.S.-backed government. The bombings at Kabul Airport, claimed by Islamic State Khorasan, or ISIS-K, served 3 purposes, according to an analyst. Let's find out what they are. Take a look.
I think the intention behind their attack was threefold. I think in the first instance, they want to, draw attention to themselves. They are an organization, they're a terrorist organization, which means they have a kind of political idea that they're trying to push and wake the world up to. And to do that, you need to get people watching. And what they had in Kabul Airport was a place where lots of people were already watching. So it was a very rich target in those terms. You had lots of civilians running around, a very confusing environment in which an attack is easier in some ways to undertake. A secondary issue is they get to attack the West by attacking the United States as it's leaving Afghanistan in this ignominious way. It demonstrates that they are striking against the sort of the evil crusader infidels who invaded these Muslim countries. And then finally, they undermine the Taliban, who are supposed to be the ones controlling Afghanistan now and bringing stability to it. Here you have a massacre in the middle of the capital city that the Taliban have just taken. So, and then finally, it was really able to announce itself, show itself off on the international stage. Until now, it had been one of many ISIL affiliates around the world. I'm not sure many people outside the kind of, terrorism watching or South Asia watching community would really know much about them. Now a lot of people know about them. Situation. And I think through this attack and through what ISK has been, has done now, it's going to be able to present itself as the alternative to the Taliban, the group that's resisting them, the group that's fighting them. So anyone who's unhappy with the Taliban might look to ISK as an option to fight alongside.
We go to other news now. In Japan, a visually impaired Paralympian was hit by a self-driving bus in the athletes' village in Tokyo, suffering head and leg injuries, according to Japanese media today. Toyota, which developed the autonomous shuttle buses used in the compound, said it had suspended operation of the vehicles after the accident on Thursday afternoon. One of its electric buses made contact with a pedestrian who is visually impaired on a pedestrian crossing, according to a statement from Toyota. And then they said, "We deeply apologize for those who suffered injuries. We are fully cooperating with the police on the case," the company added. Several major local media outlets named the injured pedestrian as Japanese judo athlete Aramitsu Kitazono. The 30-year-old fell and will need 2 weeks to recover from his injuries after being treated at the village's clinic, according to reports. Tokyo 2020 did not immediately respond to a request for comment. A new scientific study says heavy rainfall and catastrophic flooding events like those that hit Western Europe last month will be more frequent and intense due to climate change. The World Weather Attribution Initiative, it's an international group of climate scientists behind this report, and they said July's historic rainfall was 1.2 to 9 times more likely to happen due to global warming. The researchers used peer-reviewed scientific methods to examine how human-induced climate change affected rainfall events in Europe this summer. Also, according to an international study published last Tuesday, climate change made the deadly floods that devastated parts of Germany and Belgium last month up to 9 times more likely now. By analyzing local rainfall patterns across Western Europe, the authors of Tuesday's study were also able to estimate the likelihood of an event similar to last month's floods occurring again. And they found that similar events could be expected to hit any given area about once in 400 years at current warming levels. This means, they said, several events on the scale of the German and Belgian floods are likely across Western Europe within that time frame. Martin van Als, director of the International Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center, also said, quote, "It was a very rare event. On the other hand, it has already become more likely than before, and it will become more likely in the future," unquote. Van Als also said the study should be a wake-up call for people. Meanwhile, up to 95% of Earth's ocean surface will have changed by the end of the century unless humanity reins in its carbon emissions, according to research published on Thursday. Ocean surface climates defined by surface water temperature, acidity, and the concentration of the mineral aragonite, which many marine animals use to form bones and shell, support the vast majority of sea life. The world's seas have absorbed around a third of all carbon pollution produced since the Industrial Revolution. But with atmospheric CO2 levels increasing at a rate unprecedented in at least 3 million years, there are fears that ocean surface climates may become less hospitable to the species it hosts. US-based researchers wanted to see what effect carbon pollution has already had on ocean surface since the mid-18th century. They also projected the impact of emissions through to 2100. The team also found that while ocean surface climates showed little sign of change during the 20th century, by 2100 up to 82% of ocean surface may experience climates not seen in recent history. Now, these include seas that are hotter, more acidic, and that contain fewer minerals vital for sea life to grow. Lead study author Katie Lauderhaus from Northeastern University's Marine Science Center said the ocean's changing composition due to carbon pollution would likely impact all surface species. Here in the Philippines, the Department of Finance Secretary and Climate Change Commission Chairperson designate Carlos Dominguez raised the urgency for public action on climate change, warning recent disasters from extreme weather events due to this scourge further offer a preview of what passiveness will lead to. Take a look.
Over the past months, we saw how climate change is making weather disturbances more extreme across the globe. Devastating heat waves struck parts of the western United States. From Germany to China, extreme flooding caused death and destruction. These are severe symptoms of a long-term climate emergency. These are glimpses of the terrible future in store for us if we do not change the course now. As one of the countries most vulnerable to the dire effects of climate change, the Philippines is determined to take action now. In April of this year, the Philippines submitted its first nationally determined contribution to the Paris Agreement. In that submission, we committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 75% over the next decade. This ambitious target was set to challenge both ourselves as well as the rest of the world. There are 10,000 separate things that we have to do to meet our climate pledge. But our greatest defense in this battle is climate literacy and action among people. We have to convince every individual to participate in a revolution in lifestyles so that we all reduce our carbon footprints.
The Climate Change Commission Forum explored measures for helping the country better adapt to and mitigate climate change. The forum noted that the Philippines is among the countries most vulnerable to and at risk for climate change. Sea level and temperature rise, as well as increasing onslaught of extreme weather events, are climate change's impacts on the country. Heavy rain pounded Pattaya and other areas of Banglamong district on Friday morning, causing flooding on many roads and in communities. Take a look. The downpour lashed the beach town for several hours. Many sections of Sukmamvit, South Pattaya, Pattaya Sai 3 and Pattaya Beach roads were impassable due to small vehicles. The floodwater rose to 1 to 2 meters deep in some areas. Floodwaters also inundated homes and was more than a meter deep in villages on Soikao Talo in Pambon, Tongpru. Many households were unable to save their belongings, which were flooded and damaged. Now, the Meteorological Department on Friday said a monsoon trough lies across the lower north, the central, the east, and the lower northeast regions, and into the low-pressure cell in Cambodia. In other news, Russia's central regions battled extreme wildfires fueled by an unusual heat wave that comes after forest fires linked to climate change ravaged Siberia for most of the summer. Take a look. Emergencies Ministry said authorities were fighting 15 wildfires in the Urals region of Sverdlovsk. The region, which lies on the border of Europe and Asia, faced extreme fire hazard due to a heat wave, it added. Images on social media Tuesday showed flames on either side of a federal highway between regional capital Yekaterinburg and the Ural city of Perm, forcing the road shut for most of the day, according to reports. Fires had meanwhile grown so intense in Mordovia, a region southeast of Moscow, that firefighters were forced to escape from a ring of fire, according to the ministry. And in the Nizhny Novgorod region east of Moscow, 9 planes provided by the Emergencies Ministry, the Defense Ministry, and the Russian National Guard had dropped 129 tons of water onto a large wildfire spreading to neighboring Mordovia. Authorities had deployed 1,200 firefighters to put out the blaze. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Araw-arawin ng ngiti, araw-arawin ng saya. Happiness kada umaga. Sa pagpasok ng Delta variant dito sa Pilipinas, tumataas ang kaso ng COVID-19 araw-araw. Government restrictions like ECQ and now MECQ are put in place to prevent further infections. Ito ay nakakaapekto sa mga small business owners dahil limitado ang paggalaw ng mga tao. In this episode, we'll find out how the owners of an auto dealership are adapting to the changing times. Tatalakayin natin ito kasama ang ating mga bisitang sina IQ at Ia Prado mula sa EMC Prado Auto Inc.
Every day we still learn. Every day we try to innovate, we try to pivot small to the left, small to the right, to be able to press the right buttons.
Don't be afraid to invest at this time. And always look at the customer.
All these in this episode of Open for Business.
Welcome back. Thousands of climate change demonstrators are in central London as environmental activist group Extinction Rebellion are holding a new round of protests. To tell us more what they're protesting about, really, here is Janelle Kasuga joining us live from our UK bureau. Hello, Janelle.
Thank you, Alma. And yes, from Monday, thousands of climate change demonstrators thronged central London as environmentalist group Extinction Rebellion held a new round of protests, promising 2 weeks of disruption. Let's listen in.
The destruction of the Amazon is a huge disaster for the world, and yet Brazilian domestic policy is promoting continued and expanded destruction of the Amazon. The Amazon rainforest is vital in the fight against climate change. It's a huge carbon sink. It absorbs and it stores lots and lots of carbon. As it's destroyed, that carbon is released into the atmosphere and contributes to climate change.
Protesters were greeted with a large police presence as they converged on Trafalgar Square in the heart of the British capital, where they rallied with a marching band and speeches. The latest action, branded the Impossible Rebellion, saw participants block roads leading to the square, deploying a large pink structure bearing the slogan, "Come to the table." What are you waiting for? Your local area to flood or your streets to get blocked with rubble and cars? Extinction Rebellion's UK branch said on Twitter. The hashtag climate emergency is happening now, and the rebellion for your life is happening now, they added. Since holding its first protests in London in 2018, activists have repeatedly brought parts of the capital and other cities to a standstill with carnival-like demonstrations. They have also targeted individual businesses and premises in London for direct action, including newspaper offices and energy companies' headquarters. The rallies have spread to many countries around the world. Police at previous UK protests have arrested hundreds of participants, but have also faced criticisms for being too lenient. Extinction Rebellion's latest action comes as the UK government gears up to host a crucial COP26 United Nations Climate Summit in the Scottish city of Glasgow in November. It is set to draw thousands of delegates and demonstrators from all around the world. Global leaders are under renewed pressure to agree radical policy changes at the summit following the publication this month of the UN's climate science report called Terrifying by campaigners. It warned the world is on course to reach 1.5 Celsius of warming around 2013, much sooner than once predicted, and set to cause dire fallout impacting every continent. Back to you, Alma.
All right, Janelle, can you tell me what is Extinction, who are they, Extinction Rebellion, and what else are they protesting about, aside from climate
Extinction
change?
Rebellion is a group formed in Britain in 2018. It's a network of climate activists who use civil disobedience to spotlight inaction over global warming and climate change. Recently, Extinction Rebellion have also demonstrated outside the Brazilian embassy in London over President Jair Bolsonaro's policies towards the country's indigenous people. They use placards reading "Stop the Genocide" in Brazil, "Fight for Your Life," and "No to the Marco Temporal," referring to the draft law being pursued by the Brazilian government. Indigenous people also claim the law could take away their ancestral lands and are holding a week of demonstrations against what they call Bolsonaro's anti-indigenous agenda. Alma?
All right. Thank you very much, Janelle, for your updates there in London. And stay safe.
Thank you for having me. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Janelle Kasuga. We live in interesting times.
In other news, to Thailand now, where the police chief surrendered to police after being the center of a manhunt over accusations he tortured and suffocated with a plastic bag a drug suspect to death. Here's Gila Pablo joining us live. Hello, Gila.
Yes, Alma, good evening. This is an update in regards to that news. A Thai police chief surrendered to police on Thursday after being the center of a manhunt over accusations he tortured and suffocated a drug suspect to death. Thai police raided the Bangkok mansion of 41-year-old Tirisan Uttanapon, nicknamed Joe Ferrari, on Wednesday and found 13 luxury cars, local media reported. National Police confirmed during a late-night press conference Thursday that Tirisan gave himself up and was arrested in Chonburi province, southeast of the capital. Tirisan, who had served as chief of a district police station in northern Nakhon Sawan province, and some of his colleagues are facing criminal charges after video footage of a death in custody went viral on social media. The clip shows a group of men, allegedly including Tirisan, wrapping a plastic bag around the suspect's head while questioning him on August 5. Alma, the footage shows the suspect lost his consciousness and some officers tried to resuscitate him. Police investigating the case earlier this week said the station chief is suspected of causing a man's death while trying to extract a $2 million baht payment, equivalent to $61,000 US. In unprecedented move during the press conference, Alma, Tirisan answered questions from the media over a mobile phone held up to a microphone and denied he had been trying to extort money. Tirisan said he was doing his job and trying to crack down on illegal drugs. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much for that update. And looking forward, I'm sure this is a developing story. We'll be looking forward to that. Thank you, Gila.
You're very much welcome, Alma. And this is Gina Pablo reporting live from Bangkok, Thailand. We live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, 2 of 3 local government-run hospitals of Quezon City are now at full capacity in terms of COVID-19 patients, while quarantine facilities are filling up. In a Facebook post by the QC government today, the city's 12 Hope quarantine facilities for COVID-19 patients are at 82.82% with 1,402 out of 1,693 beds already occupied. The QC General Hospital in Project 8 has a 98% occupancy rate with 107 patients. Rosario Maclang Bautista General Hospital on Batasan Road is 100% full, and the Novaliches District Hospital has a 120.8% occupancy rate with 58 patients. The City Epidemiology and Disease Surveillance Unit reminded those who will test positive for COVID-19 to immediately isolate. If you need a facility for COVID-19, mild or asymptomatic patients, kindly coordinate with your barangay so that you will be admitted in our Hope facilities, the QC Post read. As of 8 a.m. on Friday, the city has 9,371 active COVID cases, while 63 areas are under special concern lockdown due to increasing cases. In a move to further improve vaccination rate, the South Australian government has made the move to allow 16-year-old and above get their dose of either the Pfizer or AstraZeneca vaccine against COVID-19. Here's Eagle News correspondent Sage Ardona for the report.
With the knowledge that the elderly and young children are most at risk, it is unlikely that young adults will push for vaccination. In a move to further improve vaccination rates, the South Australian government has made the move to allow 16-year-olds and above to get their dose of either the Pfizer or AstraZeneca vaccine against COVID-19.
South Australian Premier Stephen Marshall stated that vaccination is the way out of the pandemic and that from the 15th of August, teens and young adults will be able to receive vaccination. So far, the vaccination efforts have been fruitful with 640,000 doses administered to South Australians, including 78% of elderly citizens. In September and October, an additional 127,000 slots have been opened, with the expectation that the number of people interested in receiving vaccination will increase.
Previously, access to the Pfizer vaccine was available only to those aged 40 to 59, suffering from medical conditions or working in healthcare. With the prevalence of the Delta variant in Australia and the serious COVID situation in New South Wales, the increased access to the vaccine could not have come at a better time.
High interest in vaccination even led to the vaccine appointment booking website to crash. The increase in vaccination rates in South Australia follows the trend for the rest of the states and territories, where more than 16 million doses have been administered so far. The current pace of almost 2 million doses per week nationwide projects that the adult population of Australia is expected to be fully vaccinated by the end of the year.
With increased vaccine availability and more Australians protected from contracting and spreading severe forms of the virus, a COVID-free future is closer to becoming a reality. Reporting from Adelaide, South Australia, this is Sage Ardonia, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Meanwhile, New Zealand today extended a national lockdown sparked by a Delta virus outbreak into next week, but warned restrictions would last longer in the infection epicenter of Auckland. Let's listen in.
We are doing really well, and we have evidence that what we are doing is working, but caution is still required. As we have seen in this outbreak, Delta is definitely more infectious. And it also moves more quickly. That means you can expect our numbers to continue for some time. Based on all the information in front of us and of the advice of Dr. Bloomfield, Cabinet has decided that all of New Zealand south of the Auckland boundary will move to level 3 at 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday, August 31. For those in Auckland and Northland, so from the southern Auckland boundary to the very top of the country, you will remain in level 4.
Most residents must still remain at home during level 3, but some businesses such as restaurants and retail outlets can reopen using contactless collection methods. Prime Minister Ardern said police checkpoints would be set up to ensure there was no travel between Auckland, Northland, and the rest of the country. In other news, the risk of rare blood clotting after receiving COVID jabs is far lower than from the virus. A large-scale study by researchers from the University of Oxford found today. Fears over rare cases of clotting conditions have prompted some countries to roll out or limit rollout of the Oxford-developed AstraZeneca jab, with the UK recommending that healthy people under 40 get alternative vaccines. The study published in the BMJ Medical Journal examined data on almost 30 million people in England first vaccinated between December and April. And it found a very small increased risk of some clotting conditions that could lead to hospitalization or death shortly after first doses of the AstraZeneca and Pfizer vaccines. But it concluded that risks of most conditions were substantially higher and more prolonged after a COVID-19 infection. The issue came to the fore this week as a coroner on Thursday found that a 44-year-old BBC presenter, Lisa Shaw, died from a blood clot in her head as a rare complication from a first AstraZeneca dose. The study's lead scientist, Julia Hippisley-Cox, professor of clinical epidemiology at the University of Oxford, told BBC Radio 4 that Shaw's death was very sad, but these are very rare cases and the vast majority of patients will be absolutely fine with these vaccines. Now, the efficacy of COVID-19 jabs is guaranteed regardless of brand. National adverse effects following Immunization Committee Chair Dr. Lulu Bravo said in a televised public briefing on Thursday. However, there are rare cases of deaths if the vaccine failed to develop the right antibody level post-vaccination, and they are usually those with comorbidities. Take a look.
Sa milyon-milyong na bakunahan, at sabi nga ni Secretary Roque, almost 13 million ang fully vaccinated. So imagine, sa 13 million fully vaccinated, kung may makita ka na isa o dalawa na namatay, yan po ay talagang medyo siguro yan yung merong abnormal na immune system. Kasi hindi naman natin sinasabi na 100% garantisado ang efficacy ng bakuna. Meron pong mga tao na talagang hindi tatalaban ng bakuna dahil ang kanilang immune system ay hindi normal, hindi po sila nakaka-develop ng tamang antibody levels, hindi po sila talagang normal na meron po silang comorbidity na tinatawag. Sila po yung dati maaring nakainom ng maraming steroids or sila po ay ginagamot ng may immune modulator, ang tawag po doon. Yun po yung nakakapagpabago ng response ng katawan sa mga antigen. Kaya hindi po malakas ang kanilang antibody protection. Hindi nga naman po natin masasabi na lahat po sila ay talagang mapoprotektahan. Wala pong bakunang ganyan. Maski ano pong bakuna, ma-Pfizer, ma-Astra, ma-Sinovac, ma-Gamaleya, lahat po yan ay walang 100% efficacious maski po fully vaccinated. Kaya lang po, ang importante is makapag-report hanggat maaga, magagawan po ng treatment kung sakali po at meron silang sakit at mabibigyan po ng tamang lunas.
In other news, at least 16 workers died and more were missing after a factory fire in Pakistan's commercial capital Karachi today, according to police. More than 25 laborers were inside the small factory in a residential area of the port city when the blaze broke out, causing it to fill with thick smoke. Senior police officer Shah Jahan Khan said they are trying to recover more stranded people, but feared they might not make it out, adding that the factory had no proper fire exits. The stairs leading to the roof were also locked. Otherwise, the laborers could have survived by running to the rooftop, according to Mr. Khan. Karachi City Administrator Murtaza Wahab also said there was no safe exit for the workers. Poor industrial laws and building codes in Pakistan mean factory blazes are frequent. And the news continues here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back.
Protect yourself and loved ones. Use Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant that kills 500 strains of bacteria, fungi, and viruses such as coronavirus and other disease-causing microorganisms. Also potent against viruses in pets. It kills 99.9% of disease-causing germs and works in 10 minutes. Dissolve 1 teaspoon in 1 liter of water. Apply on areas for disinfection or use it for misting. Protect Plus Gold.
Welcome back. The Minnesota State Farm, an event that usually draws between 100,000 to 200,000 people daily for 12 days, kicked off on Thursday U.S. time, and despite recent CDC guidelines recommending mask usage in crowded settings with high transmission, few fair-goers were seen with masks. Take a look.
Yeah, I'm fully vaccinated. Felt totally safe coming out here today. Was one of the first ones in line at 6 o'clock this morning, and just having a great day here at the fair.
What I was hoping they would require masks, just because even though I've had my shots, I have always been wearing a mask. So, and I know this is something that my mom liked to do too. So I just, even though no one's wearing a mask right now, I think people are being respectful of each other and keeping their distance. I haven't seen anybody arguing about masks or not.
My mom asked me to wear a mask, and the more I thought about it, I was like, I do feel more comfortable with that, especially since COVID's kind of getting bad again. I was like, I should start wearing my mask again.
Now, the fair was canceled last year due to the pandemic, though a smaller reservation-only drive-through fair allowed fans to buy food from their favorite vendors from the safety of their cars. Despite recent CDC guidelines recommending mask usage in crowded settings with high transmission, very few fair-goers were seen with masks. The Minnesota State Fair strongly urged attendees to wear masks, especially in indoor settings, but stopped short of officially requiring any pandemic precautions. This caused one of the scheduled concert performers, Low Cut Connie, to cancel their Saturday concert at the fair. COVID concerns, supply chain issues, and the ongoing labor shortage contributed to 150 state fair vendors dropping out of the fair altogether. In other news, Microsoft said it has warned thousands of its cloud computing clients of a recently discovered flaw that left their data vulnerable for an extended period. The problem involved keys used to access Microsoft Azure's flagship database service, Cosmos DB, and was discovered 2 weeks ago by cybersecurity company Wiz. Imagine our surprise when we were able to gain complete unrestricted access to the accounts and databases of several thousand Microsoft Azure customers, including many Fortune 500 companies, Wiz said on its blog Thursday. Companies including Coca-Cola and ExxonMobil use Cosmos DB to manage massive volumes of data around the world in real time, according to Wiz. The cloud service is used to store data as well as to analyze and process everything from orders, from supplies to transactions with consumers. According to Microsoft, customers who may have been impacted were notified, but there was no evidence the flaw had been exploited by malicious actors. Microsoft told more than 30% of Cosmos DB customers that they needed to change their access keys, according to Wiz. But the cybersecurity firm warned others could be at risk. Microsoft is one of the world's biggest cloud service providers behind Amazon. Demand has skyrocketed during the COVID-19 pandemic with the growth of working from home and reliance on digital services for things like entertainment and shopping. Brazilian athletes snagged the first track and field golds of the Tokyo Paralympics today, as elsewhere defending champions Australia booked their spot in the wheelchair rugby semi-final. But first, a total of 45 Paralympic golds are up for grabs on Friday, with a range of sports getting started, including archery, athletics, and judo, which is being contested at Tokyo's iconic Budokan venue. Brazil's Yeltsin Jacques became the first track gold medalist of the Tokyo Games, squeezing out Japan's Kenya Karasawa to top the podium in the men's 5,000-meter T11 final. Jacques, who is visually impaired and runs with a guide, said his win was the culmination of 5 years of training. Meanwhile, fellow Brazilian Silvânia Costa de Oliveira took the first gold of the field event, successfully defending the title she won in Rio in the women's T11 long jump. And space weather observers noted a massive solar tsunami across the sun caused by the eruption of a sunspot that happened on Thursday, August 26, according to a website monitoring the sun's activity. Take a look. Spaceweather.com said that this solar tsunami could cause a coronal mass ejection, or CME. In fact, coronagraphs of the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, or SOHO, already detected this CME. A coronal mass ejection can affect the Earth's magnetic field depending on its strength. The storm cloud appears to be heading for Earth, according to the website spaceweather.com. The site monitors news and information about the Sun-Earth environment. It also said that analysts from the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, are looking at the CME now using computer models to determine its arrival time. Spaceweather.com forecasts this storm cloud to arrive on Earth by August 30. Explaining what coronal mass ejections are, NOAA said these are large expulsions of plasma and magnetic field from the sun's corona that can eject billions of tons of coronal material and carry an embedded magnetic field, or frozen in flux, that is stronger than the background solar wind interplanetary magnetic field strength, or IMF strength. And we go to St. Petersburg, Russia, for a tour of the Oldelnaya flea market. Sherilyn Carlos takes us there.
The Oldelnaya flea market is a famous and one of the largest flea markets in Russia. It has also been named as one of the top 10 most famous flea markets in the world because it has a great amount of value of memorabilia from the World War II and some genuine items from the Soviet Union era. The flea market is called Oldelnaya because it is close to the Oldelnaya metro station of St. Petersburg, Russia. The local calls the place Oldelka. People come and visit the flea market mainly for these two reasons. The first one, because it reflects the local culture, and secondly, it is located at historical places. The flea market is open from early mornings until 5 p.m. during weekends. As you walk out of the metro station, you are most likely to see a crowd heading to the market. You can also see a long line of stalls selling second-hand goods. The flea market is at the end of this line, at the open area with goods laid out on the blankets on the ground. As you walk around in the flea market, You will notice before from all background, each one in all of the different items, including some collectible from World War II and the Soviet Union era. So if you like to collect antiques, porcelain, ceramics, book, magazine, old coin, Soviet Union era photos, and postcard, be prepared to spend a good amount of time here. Be ready to have fun here in the city of St. Petersburg, Russia for Eagle News International. I am Sherilyn Carlos. Will be interesting time.
Thank you, Sherilyn. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you for joining us. And at the end of the day, as I always say, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times. Good night.
This program is supported by Protect Plus Gold, a broad-spectrum disinfectant, kills 99.9% of disease-causing germs and works in 10 minutes.